We're ready to get started. We're so excited to show you what we've been working on. I am Rachel Foles, and I'm the Director of Product here at Circle. And I'd love to show you that. And I'm joined by Sam.
Hi, Rachel. Thanks for having me on your show today. I'm always happy to be a part of the Circle product team and get to think about these problems for our customers and solve them on a day-to-day. So I'm excited to show everybody what we have come up with for emails.
So if you have questions, we're going to cover a lot of ground today. There's going to be some new concepts, some new ways of looking at familiar things. And naturally, you're going to have questions. We love questions in the product side because it helps us come up with great solutions. So please feel free to include those in the Q&A section. We will do our very, very best to answer them as they come in. And if we're not able to answer them right away, we will make sure that we get back to you with a great answer, be it from us or from your customer success representatives.
Yeah. And we have some time at the end set aside to answer anything that falls through.
So let's talk about a little bit about why we're doing this. We know how important it is for your message to be heard as communicators. So our goal for this year is to enrich our cross-channel comm strategy. We want to meet your audience exactly where they are, be it on your intranet or your website, on email, or even on mobile. We have an application in development now with the messages that matter the most to them. So if your audience reads your message on any of these Circle-powered channels, they're going to get a fresh infusion of important content, keeping your channels looking fresh and relevant, making sure that they're not receiving old information or receiving things that they've already read. That's the quickest way to lose the interest of your audience. So it's really important. So what we're talking about today, kind of the thing that we're focusing on is our newsletter redesign. And that's just step one in this process.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that one of the biggest values that Circle brings to the table is that newsletter design is automated. You don't have to spend time compiling all the stories and figuring out which one should go first and making the images a perfect size or anything. So I think that's important to remember that we're talking about an automated design to save you time. So we wanted to give communicators like you new tools to tell your organization's story. So we went back to the drawing board to reimagine the form and function. We know how busy your audience is, so we want to provide immense value for them by putting what's essential up top. We still offer those 3 distinct layouts that you've seen before, and your audience can choose from.
Right, so we didn't lose that, and we're using the elements that you guys are already operating within to provide even a more beautiful, more interesting layout for your automated content. And the final thing, the most important thing, is to make sure your audience is seeing the communications that are essential to them. So let's say you've been on vacation. You've got 300 emails. Everyone's experienced this. It's the hardest part about coming back from vacation. You have 300 emails in your box. What do you tackle? And when you're an internal communicator, it's really important that your messages are seen. And so by providing this value, we can help those employees catch up. And if you're a new employee, there's so much value to getting you stood up quickly and helping you understand the lay of the land. And things like this can really help differentiate for folks like what's important and what is essential and what needs to happen now. So like I said, we're really, really excited. So with this release, we're introducing a new concept, something you guys have used before if you're a Circle client now, called priority content. So we're just using the things that you're telling us right now to get your message heard in a different way.
Yeah, so what you see here is the content creator or content editor if you're pulling in from content sources or from individual links. So if you haven't seen this before, you have seen it. Let's remind you that if you click on this cog in the top right corner, it will open up a panel, and this is where the distribution settings are found, and this is where you can find the posting priorities. So the first option based on audience interest is the default, and it's what we recommend so that each newsletter comes to each user or employee in a personalized fashion. But if you can also select other priorities, including to everyone or to everyone as their first story. And you can also distinguish if you want to do that just once, or if you want to send it multiple times to a specific date, which you can also select.
So you might be really familiar with this, but before now, nothing really visually distinguished these important items from the other in your newsletter. Yeah. We would put those up top, and we would make sure that they were the first story, but nothing really communicated to your audience, hey, this is important. This was selected. Someone has decided that this is really important to you and you really have to see it.
It was really just a way of ordering content.
Yeah. So it was just another element to the ordering of content and automated newsletters that we're already doing, but now we're going to give you a better visual representation of that. Okay, so all of that really changes with this release. We're going to introduce something to you new called chips. So the chip here on the screen that you see is the purple button with the bell and the word chips in it. These little visual storytellers show up to let your audience know how important a post is. You might have noticed these guys on Facebook's latest update or in the search functions of other popular apps that you use. With this update, you can have up to 3 chipped full width stories in any automated newsletter. We know this is a new concept, so Sam and I came up with a fun idea.
Yeah, so chips makes me think of poker. So why
Mhm.
not do a card theme? So we're going to play a game of war today to figure out which piece of content has the most value and how it's going to show up in the newsletter. So the first priority chip that we're going to talk about is top story. And this is when you set that distribution setting to everyone as their first story. In the past, what this meant was it will be the first story in your newsletter. There's no presentation difference. For our game, we'll call this the ace, and aces are high. I know that some card players think aces are low, but for this game, aces are high. And then here's an example that you can talk about.
Yeah, sure. So what we have here is an employee spotlight of Brianna Bradford, who is a trivia super champ. Um, Brianna's story is really important that you make sure that your audience sees it. You've selected this as a top story. So if that's the case, this will be the first item in everyone's newsletter, unless there are multiple top stories available. If you have many top stories, we will choose the 3 that will be, we're still going to use that artificial intelligence and you still have the same control. So the 3 that will be most relevant to each audience member will come up to the top, and we'll continue to serve the others in the rest of the newsletter until that content is consumed or expires. So going back to that cross-channel comm strategy, if you've already read Brianna's story on another channel like the internet, you're not going to see the story here, and the second top story will be the #1 story in your automated newsletter.
That way you're always getting fresh content.
Right.
Yeah, and so let's break down the presentation a little bit now that we're seeing this for the first time. So you have the chip up top, and that top story that's coming from your setting as a admin saying, I want this to be a top story for everyone. And then something new here is we're giving them a full width image for these priority content. Before it depended on the newsletter style. And now we're saying that if you say this is a priority content, it's going to get this full width presentation. And then below you get the summary, or if you don't have a summary, it'll be filled by the first however many characters in the story. And then the call to action of continue reading is appended to the end of the summary there. And all of this is clickable to take it to the story page or the intranet site or wherever it's being hosted.
Right. So they can take this action to read the story from any part of this presentation. Everything from the top story chip to the full width image to the differentiating call to action of continue reading suggests to your audience, this is something different, this is something important. And that's the kind of levers that we're trying to pull with this update.
So the next chip that we want to talk about is the big news chip. And if you're following along with the game, we're going to assign this one the king. And will all be important later because we're going to play a game of content war together, and you can play along at home. So this would be if you set it to everyone, not to everyone as the first story, but just to everyone. This means that it'll show up in the news. Before, it meant it'll show up in the newsletter somewhere. It has to be presented, whether that's story 2 or story 7. But now we're going to pull this up and make it the second most prioritized content, and we're going to call it big news. So let's look at an example of that.
Yeah, so just like our top story presentation, this full width presentation gets the big news bell. The difference, of course, being the title there. The same type of call to action, the same presentation, but still it says to your users, this is important. This is something to click on. So to the Ace King example, so this would be the second story in a newsletter. And don't worry, I know that this is all a lot of first, second, third, and we're going to show you 3 distinct newsletter samples toward the end of our webinar that kind of show this all put together for you. So don't sweat. We just want to introduce the concepts to you at this point.
So the two that we just talked about were if you want to send something to everyone, that's like everyone needs to see this. But sometimes you want priority content to be segmented to a specific group of people. So for that, we've introduced the just for you chip. And when I say just for you, it's going to be just for name of employee or subscriber or whoever's receiving the email. In this case, it's Sam. So in our game,
Do I have it? There it
click
is.
back on there.
Yeah.
There we go. So it will be the queen for our game. And you can also do this for events. So events for you will just be, it's a different type of content, but it still has the same weight.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to have that personalized chip with your name on it.
Yep. So we have an event here. It's for Sam, since he works in software. Online security is very important to him. So we have this sent to his segment as something that he should really look at for attending. As you can see, the event presentation is updated. We've added a few things that are not demonstrated here that will be demonstrated in the full example. For ongoing events, we'll have a happening now, or that will show people that something could go on for dates. An example would be open enrollment. So if open enrollment is happening for the next 60 days, there where it says the date, it will say until and then the end date. You have the location as well, and then a register or view call to action depending on the type of event it is, and if you give us a URL to register.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think using the name and the chip is a very strategic decision as well. It definitely calls out, says this is not just a normal event. This is something that's been selected for you.
Right. Yeah, and I think that because you're selecting those segments and you're telling like this group of people, it's would be really great if they attended. To your point, I think that that really is helpful to entice you to click and to attend.
So war is kind of a boring game, so why not introduce some what we're calling wild chips or wild cards. And for this game, we're going to say deuces are wild.
Mm-hmm.
So these are chips that don't carry primary priority, but that they can add on to the already listed priority chips. So the first example would be trending. And this is a chip that is added to a piece of content that is performing extremely well with your audience. Technically speaking, that means that the engagement score has gone above 50, and that will trigger this chip that we add to the content. So let's go back to the employee spotlight example.
Right. So Brianna's employee spotlight has been running and it's doing really well. People really like Brianna. They want her on their trivia team for next Wednesday. And so a lot of people have been clicking on this one. So it's beginning to trend in the organization. Those combination, our hope with this release is that the combination of saying that this is an important top story, it has this beautiful presentation. And then when you add on that additional trending chip says, wow, this is really something worth viewing.
It's almost like FOMO.
Right. Like everyone's doing it. Why aren't you?
Yeah. And the trending chip itself and the red color, it comes from a lot of popular news sites already. So like Apple News does this. The first thing that you're going to see when you open Apple News is all the trending news. Or if you do a search on Twitter, it's all the stuff that's trending around the world. It's pulling that to the top for you.
Right. And so we really try to bring those familiar experiences that you and your audience are having on the wild internet into circle to make this feel familiar so you know what actions you're being asked to take. I associate the trending chip a lot with BuzzFeed too.
Yeah. So the next wild deuce is, stop laughing out there, is the percent match chip. So this is more about the individual. So think about this as Netflix almost, where it's saying, you are interested in this, and our algorithm has said that it's a 97% match. So I like basketball. This story is about basketball. We think you should read this story. So if you apply that to the big news event over here.
Yeah, so just like trending, it's going to show up as a partner to your priority chips. If the content isn't part of your priority content, then a text version will show in the sections below. It's also important to note that these are only if you have that percent match, displayed percent match and trending on in your newsletter settings. If you don't, then these things won't appear, but it's just an additional enticement. I mean, 100% match, right?
I must love stakeholder meetings.
Mean, why wouldn't you love stakeholder meetings? I mean, it looks like a really great time to me.
Yeah, so moving on to the next section. So we've talked about the priority content. That's the stuff that you guys are saying as a content creator that it needs to be seen by some audience, whether that be everyone or a segment. And then the next section here is really where we try and build in that Netflix approach and really target it to an individual so that each email feels like it was personally built for that person.
Yeah. So just like we talked about before, the first 3 slots are for those big, wide, full width display chipped priority stories. We'll run out the rest of them in the top of this section, and then we will start to apply more and more logic as you get deeper into the newsletter.
Yeah, so the Jack card in our game here is the percent match and trending. So when a piece of content in the distribution settings, if you select based on audience interest, that's just the default, so it doesn't carry any weight. So we're going to use these 2 items to determine where it should fall in this section. So something that's 100% match is going to show up at the top, and something that's a 47% match may fall down more towards the bottom. So it's
Yeah, and even when your audience has not yet personalized, we're still learning about them always by the things that they click on and by the actions that they take within any of the cross-channel comms. So we also have training available while we're learning, is we're showing them the things that are most popular in your organization as a way to try to figure out what is going to be most important to them. So the mix of those 2 things is what makes up this recommended for you section. So let's take a look at it. Here we have a story that was selected for me to my segment, make the most out of company stock. And then we have the next story in the section is a trending story. So this is what I'm calling a text chip. Sam, what would you call that?
We'll go with text chip.
We're going with text chip. You heard it here first. For trending, letting everyone's loving the stakeholders wowed at Q1 meeting. I told you it was a good time and you did not attend apparently, and we changed to art, and so now everything's better. So this section will run out the however many you've set as your minimum to send or your maximum. Between that, we have iterations for all of those permutations of the way that we lay these out, depending on how many stories you have available, what you send as your minimum, what you send as your maximum, and we have beautiful designs for any of those in between.
And it's all automated.
100% automated. And here's the next part of that section. So you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so this is the percent match section. So this, again, thinking about Netflix, these are probably things that, let's say that I read another article about tax season. As soon as you talk about tax season again, they're going to know that it is for me and that I would probably enjoy reading this as well. I, for one, love taxes.
Well, Athos, our pretend company here, is a financial services firm, so it's very important. Tax season is a very important time for them, I can imagine. And then the year in review, that percent match could come from other stories that I'd post in the past about our progress or about our leadership. And so we're learning every single time. And a click on that is a vote for more stories like it, if you want to think of it that way.
Yeah.
So up next, our next section, if you have the traditional format's actually our most popular format. You will be treated to another section if you have 7 stories or more, the other news section.
So other news in our game of war is just a value card. It's a 3 through a 9, and it doesn't carry any weight. So this is stuff that's going to fall down towards the bottom of the newsletter. And we'll show that section here.
Yeah.
So presentation wise, you're losing the image and the any kind of call out chip or color differentiation. And that's not a huge deal. That's actually a benefit to this, because if someone clicks on this, that means that they really want to read it. And that we know that next time we should pull that up into the top of the newsletter.
Yeah, that's a very interesting piece of data for us to look at. And also, just providing different looks and layouts is another way to make what is an automated newsletter look very hand-selected, very put together. So you're spending no time, but the way that it comes together makes it look like you spent a lot of time.
Yeah, and the longer that we're collecting data, the more tailored it will be for that specific user. So they'll feel like you're hand-building this for them specifically.
And our final section, which appears in all 3 of our formats, headlines only, headlines plus, and traditional, is upcoming events. Upcoming events, I feel like, is a big difference maker in this design. We're giving you a really nice new presentation for those multi-day events like open enrollment that I talked about earlier. And I think it's a really big upgrade. Sam, you want to talk me through kind of what your inspiration was here?
Yeah, so I looked a lot into ticketing sites, think StubHub and SeatGeek, and how they were because they have tons of events on there. That's all that they have. How are they presenting that information in a clear way that made sense? So if you look here, you're going to have the date of the event, and if it's happening now, it's going to be highlighted in red so that you know that that's something that you should look at and see what's happening. So below that is the time. And if an event is happening now, that time is going to be translated into how much time is left. So in this case,
I lost my notes, guys. Sorry. There you go.
In this case, this open enrollment is available for 24 more days.
Sorry, guys. I was trying to answer a Q&A question and I dragged it to the wrong screen. Go ahead.
There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so open enrollment will be available for 24 more days. And you also have the event title and the location. That location can either be a physical location like 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue there, or it could be the online link. So for open enrollment, it would take you to the actual the enrollment page.
Yeah. And so we actually had a question from the audience. Can the chip colors match our branding? The chip colors are automatically matched to your branding. So our Athos colors are this beautiful purple that you see here. But all of your chips, as far as top story, big news, etc., those are all based on the branding colors that you put in circle.
That person gets some points for pointing that out.
I know. I had previously thought about mentioning it, but I forgot to include it. So thank you for reminding us of that. And, you know, with the upcoming events, the calls to action are different, once again, depending on if it's an event that you register for or if not. So pretty great.
Yep.
All right. You ready?
Drum roll. Let's play Content War. I feel like I'm at a casino right now, and I'm the dealer at the table.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, so what
do
we got?
I'm going to deal you 3 pieces of content here.
Okay.
So you have the stakeholders meeting, which is big news, the employee spotlight, which you said is a top story, and then something that you want segmented to Sam. He loves company stock.
Okay, so if I'm remembering back to our card game previous, top story is our ace, big news is our king, and just for Sam would be our queen. So it would be top story, big news, and just for Sam. How to do?
You guys can play along at home as well. And the answer is...
Yay!
You got it right.
All right. And that would be a fine looking newsletter.
And it's important to note that this is the order that it would be presented in the newsletter. So top story would be first, and then big news, and then just for Sam. And they would all receive that full width layout with the chips and any associated wild chips as well. So let's play one more time.
Okay.
So this one, you got the same big news story.
Oof.
And now you have an event for Sam and just for Sam.
Wow. So what I have here is a king and 2 queens.
Yeah. So just like in
So we're playing euchre? Okay.
Just like in war, you'd play a second card. So we know that this story has a 97% match to Sam, so he's going to enjoy this one more than maybe the event. So then that would turn into this order.
And that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, so the wild chips play a role as well. If you had 3 top stories, the top story that is already trending is going to be greater than the other 2 that you just posted maybe.
And yeah, and I think that that makes sense. If they're both been assigned the same level of priority, the communicators have decided that these are of equal importance as stories or mapped to the same set of people, it makes sense that our system does pick up on that and apply some logic to what would be most engaging for them. If you have to see everything, what are you most likely to click on first?
Yeah, because if you lose somebody on the first story, then you're not going to get them to click anywhere else in the email. So that first story is very important.
Yep, that first story is
gaining
key.
their attention.
All right. Well, thank you guys for playing Content War. All right. For this portion, we're going to hop out of the deck. See what we did there? And we're going to show you some real examples of how this is going to work for you. So once again, we're back to Athos. That's our pretend company. And at the top here, this is on our staging site. So that's what you're seeing. So first we have a generated headline. I have 6 priority content pieces, as you can see here. Plus what's trending in Athos. In this case, I have not personalized yet my Athos newsletter. And then we have the most popular categories at this organization, just for Rachel.
This newsletter header photo is something that is selected by the organization, and it can be found in the branding under settings.
Yes. And the width is fixed, but the height is up to you. So you have a little bit of storytelling possibilities there as well. So let's start with Brianna. She is trending. She is doing great. She's a top story. She's got her trending wild deuce on her right now. But we have another top story, and it's just for me. So I have a top story that's also been sent to my segment. So it's very important, obviously, that I know that open enrollment is ongoing and ends up. Then up next, we have an ask for feedback that's big news sent to my segment, and that's a need in Circle. And then we pick up a recommended for you section. And just like we noted in the top where it said the 6 things that I need to know, we have those 3 full width presentation stories, but then we have some other things that are very important, and they get the text chips like event for Rachel. This is something that's been sent to my segment. Evidently, Sam and I need to attend this very important lunch and learn on 42nd Street. This sounds fun. We should go.
I'll book the flight.
Okay, that's actually my birthday, so it's going to be a big day for me. Up next, we have the big news and another just for Rachel to my segment. And then finally, we're back here and we're picking up some of the other stories that are available to me due to what the communicator has said or what's available in the Circle. And then we have our other news flesh out this traditional newsletter with.
Apparently, you don't care about taxes.
I guess not. I haven't personalized.
Okay,
it was
true.
on purpose, but yes, I care very deeply. And then we have some upcoming events. And all of this is set to the branding of the organization. Up next, we have a Headlines Plus layout. Headlines Plus is our second most popular layout. It's a very close second to traditional, both in what organizations choose and what the users choose. So it's kind of up to both of you to decide.
The more you know.
So here we are with our top story and kind of the same things going on up here because it's still me and it's still what the system has decided I need, but then the layout changes a little bit here. In Headlines Plus, everything is right side. All of these recommended for you stories are to the right side. All of these elements, as you can see by my it's turned into a little pointer that I can click on any of these, and that's all going to be logged, boosting that click-through rate. Everything here is very, very clickable.
Yeah, there's nothing worse than getting an email when nothing is clickable besides the button. So,
yes.
Especially at the internet today, like everything should be clickable.
That's right, and the same way on your device as well.
Mm-hmm.
This looks wonderful on your device. In the Headlines Plus layout, you do not have the other news section. We go right into upcoming events, and that rounds out our newsletter. And I believe on Athos, I have my number set to 9 as far as the number of stories I should send.
The minimum content required?
I think the minimum set to 3, but the
okay.
maximum set to 9.
Okay.
Because you can set the minimum to say don't send anything if I don't have at least 3 stories, but the maximum to say don't send more than 9. Mm-hmm. All right, and so we have our same 3, because once again, this one's for me, same 3 stories.
And this is the headlines only, correct?
And so the headlines only is definitely lighter. It doesn't include those summaries. And you can see like it's a more simplistic Instagram-y type layout, just each piece living in its own specific section, very simplified, very short, making those headlines really count. And we just go down the line there.
It's for the no nonsense people.
That's
show me what I need to
just
see.
Just the facts. That's right. That's all I need. There we go at the end.
Can we talk about the gray that is behind the email? Where does that come from?
So the gray that's behind the email is something that you can actually select for yourself in the branding settings, I believe, that you can pick whatever color works best for your organization is another way, maybe for a tertiary brand color or something that you use on your website or your intranet as kind of the background to add that piece of consistency.
Yeah. I think it adds a level of nuance to the email. It's not just that plain white email anymore.
Yeah, because the plain white can look a little bit endless.
Yeah.
But I like that it kind of pops it off the page this way when you have it. And everything like your pre-header text and things like that, that all comes through on top of that. So you have a lot of options. Nothing about the way that we're handling promotional banners or anything like that is changing. So you'll still be able to place those things just as you had before. All right, well, let's hop back into the deck. I know, we can't stop, guys, I'm sorry. And I'm gonna pull up my notes, if you don't mind. There we go, all right. F11's not liking me today. There we go. All right. So as part of our push to give you more tools for your priority content, we have reworked our subject lines to be a little bit more dynamic, a little bit more focused on alerting the audience that the information contained inside your messages is valuable, it's relevant to them, and it's something that they need to see. So in this section, we're going to share a few examples of how this will work for your organization. So here we are. We're in Sam's inbox. Sam, thanks for having us.
No problem.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So let's diagram this little headline here. So Sam has 4 things, so more than 3 targeted updates, priority content. So that's the first piece.
And that's set by the admin.
That's right.
So they're saying there are 4 things out there that need to be seen by Sam, whether that is to everyone or that's something that was segmented directly to Sam.
Right. So any of those nuances that we showed you in the first part in the distribution settings that kind of apply that priority, that's where this number comes from. You have 4 pieces of priority content that you need to see that the communicators or leaders have decided is important for you. Then we're using your name, token, and that needs to know language. And then we're adding at the end there, the recipient's highest interests that are contained within that message.
Yeah. So I think that this pulls in a lot of psychological triggers. So the 4 things feels to me like the alert you get on your phone or a notification that you get. It's that monkey brain instinct, like, oh, 4 things, I need to see what those are. And then the name really drives it home, saying like, this is 4 things for you. And then it also is relatable because design and product news, like I'm going to read anything about that.
Yeah, we want it to be specific, repeatable, and actionable. And so we want when they see 4 things for them to understand when they're opening what those 4 things are and how they're going to identify them. And if you have less than 3 priority content, then you're going to get a different presentation. We want to keep the presentations varied so it doesn't look like we're automatically generating. So there's a lot of headline permutations, even more when if you're not choosing to use priority content in this, let's say this round of messages that you're sending out. We have a whole nother set of headlines that we're generating for you. So you go back to your 2 must-see stories, plus what's trending at Athos. In this case, this would be my experience as I haven't personalized.
Yep.
All right. So in this also, we wanted to better define how we're using that pre-header or the preview text to give your messages like this extra flush of openability, make them super interesting. So we're back in your inbox.
Yeah. What is preview text?
Yeah. So the preview text, if you don't define it, then it's just going to pick up the first thing that you have in your newsletter or your email or whatever it is. So you see this in your inbox as you get the subject line, but then you might get a little bit extra, maybe 55 characters of what's the first thing that's said in there. And I think that that's more so for messages between individuals, but whenever I was in marketing, this was something that we used a lot as another way to convince people to open a message. So we wanted to use that marketing learning here for you guys. So we're going to use the categories again. We're going to use the name again when we have it, and we're going to make it as interesting as possible to really let them know whichever kind of eye track they go on that there's something in here that's important to them.
So I think it's important that this is appended to the top of the newsletter. This is what you saw above the header photo, because otherwise it would just be the first line of text in the email, which
could be an
for
image.
These masks, it wouldn't make sense.
Right, and it wouldn't be anything. And you've even seen it, I think, in other messages where they don't use it at all, or it isn't something valuable, or it's maybe garbled nonsense. It's an image URL, things like that. So we want to be sure that we're using every available canvas to better tell the story.
So we hope that this presentation has inspired you to become a master of your content deck. No? Okay.
No, I'm going to have to get a sound machine after this one. Yeah, and I think that just showing you that you have a lot of cards to play, a lot of availability to tell your story a lot of different ways. So what does everyone want to know? Of course, when is this coming out? So our planned release date is in early February of this year. So very, very soon, we're looking forward to having this out to you and ready for you to use. In the meantime, between now and then, I'll be writing a series of release education posts, as well as sharing this webinar on our Circle Roundup and on our blog and things. So you're able to get yourself educated and everyone ready for this change. I hope that you're really, really, really excited for it, because I know that we're excited to share it with you. So I would love to open the floor for Q&A if we could. And if anyone has any questions, I would love to answer them. So Stephen St. George asks, do you plan to produce additional videos? As far as in support of the product, we are in talks about the best way to educate people on product changes through video in ways that make sense. Thank you, TR. One of the challenges that's really awesome, and one of the reasons why I love working here, is that we are changing and moving and progressing so fast that sometimes the video production cycle doesn't really jive with how quickly we're trying to improve the product and make it easier to use. But yes, I think in this case, we would love to have some supporting
And I think
elements.
we make up for how fast we go with our customer success team on how focused they are and dedicated to making sure that our customers are satisfied with their product, and not only that, but they're successful with what they're doing.
Right, and a big focus are for us on our side this year is making sure that the release education is complete and makes sense and is written in language that helps everyone understand not only what it does, but why it does it and how you can best maximize it. So thank you. Who else has questions? We would love to answer any questions. Sam, what was your favorite part of making this?
I think my favorite part was dealing with the restrictions that email presents. It's naturally not the most beautiful place to work. It's kind of like working in Microsoft Paint as a designer. So being able to work in those restrictions and think about these problems in a way that we can solve a complex problem with a simple tool as effective as possible. And working through that was a lot of fun.
For me, the logic piece of, I consider it like a mystery box challenge on any given cooking show, that I had only so many ingredients and how could I make the most wonderful dish from this set of ingredients. And I feel like in that way, I think we did really well, and I'm really excited to see this out for people.
Yeah.
So.
And I've also really enjoyed working with our lead software engineer for the Project Clock. He's done a great job of really bringing to life our vision. So.
All right. Well, if no one else has any questions, and if you'd rather reach out to us directly, please feel free to use our email addresses. I know how busy everyone is, so thank you guys all so very much for spending this time with us this afternoon. As soon as I'm able to, I'll get this recording emailed out to you, and have a fantastic day. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Bye.